Welcome, everybody, to another Agents of Transformation interview, this time with my friend Ade. And Ade, will you please correctly pronounce your full name?
It is Ade Anifowose.
Anifowose.
Anifowose. Yeah.
So Ade is a passionate transformational guide. And one of my dear friends and colleagues reached out to me and said, here's someone you have to meet.
Mhm.
Ade, for over 25 years, has devoted his life to both being a student and a teacher of ancient African wisdom traditions. Ade's teachings is rooted in the understanding that we are the faces of our ancestors. Our ancestors live in us and we in them, he says. He believes that real transformation happens when we are willing to go within and do the necessary healing work. Otherwise, we are simply living from a mindset of separation in the realm of oneness. Ade believes that everything is connected and it all belongs. His mission is to assist people in being the bridge between the shadow and the light. So welcome, Ade. I am thrilled to have you and introduce you to my community. So
Oh, thank you.
let's
Thank
start
you.
talking about how you actually got started on your journey that eventually has led you to being a guide for others.
Mm, well, I think there's a long story, but I think the shortest journey is where I often talk about beginning, the beginning of an ending. I was born in UK, and my parents came over from Nigeria. Well, my mom was pregnant actually with me in Germany, and then they moved to UK. She was 6 months pregnant when they moved to UK, and I was born here. And a few months later, I was being fostered by a nanny, a white nanny, and so I had a Nigerian mother who looks same skin color, but spending most of the time with a white nanny. So I was in two different worlds. And of course, at that time, we don't always have the kind of questions we have as an adult. But I share that to say that that experience sent me on a journey of belonging and identity and where do I belong? Who am I? It shaped and formed the container for how I was going to navigate this planet. So it's the things that's been my driving force. And then the other thing is, I've always, since I was young, I've always felt like there's always more. There's always more. And it's not more from a lack perspective, but we can create something, but it could be more. It can be greater. And at that time, I really was. It was just a feeling that I had, and whether I'm working, sometimes I feel like, yeah, I love this job, but I could be doing more. That more led me to America from UK. I was working in UK, and it led me to America, and that's where I really um, embarked on my conscious spiritual journey, spiritual path. And I say conscious because I feel like whether we know it or not, we're on a spiritual path. Life is spiritual, everything is spiritual, everything comes from the spirit, the invisible. Some of us go a different route, whether that's a religious path, whether there's a nature path, whether that's the pagan path, whatever. It's all the same. It's just a different way, different roads that leads to the same destination. And the destination is not a location. It is everywhere. And on that journey, I ended up attending a spiritual center called Hillside International Truth Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's when the light bulb went off for me because the teaching were reminding me of thoughts that I've always had, some ideas about life that I couldn't put into words. And from there, I realized I am here to teach, I am here to inspire. And as I went to classes and workshops and retreats, I started to realize there's some things I need to reprogram. There's some things I need to clean out. There's some things I needed to face. And as I did the work, I'm realizing I am literally here as a teacher and a student of life. So I basically just decided this is what I've been looking for. That was my more. So aligning with the more that was calling me up and out, inspires me to be that space for others. So that's the short version of it.
That's beautiful. So you're back in the UK now.
That's correct. Yes.
But I'm assuming with Zoom that you can work with clients from all over the world like I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even before the lockdown, I mean, I've always been on Zoom, so I'm quite familiar with Zoom. During the lockdown and pandemic, people were like, "Oh my God, this thing Zoom, I can't deal with it. I'm zoomed out." I'm like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" And then I had to like say, "Okay, this is new for some people, but yes, it allows me to reach people globally, and not just me reaching people. I think one of the advantages of the pandemic is people have become. We talk about it that it's a global village, but it's almost like we were forced to live that truth out. And now you get jobs that saying it's a hybrid. You can come in 2 days and then 3 days you work from home. In the past, the idea of working from home, we're like, no, that's never going to happen.
Right.
And I think that's the journey of life when it comes to transformation, healing, and development. Sometimes we literally have to be forced into what's good for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to how do your clients find you and what do most of your clients or students come wanting to change? What is the biggest thing that they most want to change?
It's interesting because, as you read in my bio, I believe that everything is connected. And as I've changed, the kind of people I'm involved with now is different. The conversation is far more about belonging and identity. It's everywhere. And it's also been my journey. So I told you about my struggle with belonging, unbelonging, where's home, where's home, who am I? So I left Nigeria, I came back to UK 1996, and I haven't been back since. At that time I was just about to turn 18. So then I lived here and then eventually moved to America. So that sense of where is home has stayed with me. And 2018, 2017, 18, I was beginning to feel like I was living in Atlanta then. I was really feeling like I found home. I feel that my life was getting bigger and I knew I needed to rise. So there were things that I was doing that I know I got to let go. There's some things I need to release because in order to match the rising that was happening, I was have to let go so I can rise up. And I was feeling good about where I was. And sometimes, if not most times, when we make a request to the divine of wanting to grow, develop, transform, sometimes we don't know. I think most times we don't know what we're praying for because it doesn't always happen the way we think is going to happen. And I think that's by design because if it happened the way I thought it's going to happen, then I would have done it. The reason I'm asking for some kind of help is because I don't know. What happened for me was during that time when I was saying, okay, God, I'm ready to step up and align with my life. Um, I got stopped by Border Patrol in New Mexico. Now, my former wife and I, we many years ago, we were our relationships. The first few years were great, but then we went through what people go through in a relationship. During that time, we were applying for my green card, but we never finished the process. We separated for many years, and then we're going to get back together trying to do it. Long story short, we didn't finish the process. Got stopped by Border Patrol in New Mexico on my way to the Bay Area, and they came in. And as soon as they got on, because I was on a Greyhound bus going to the Bay Area, because at that time I knew I didn't need to get on a plane. And it was around the time our brother Trump, was talking about legal immigrants. That conversation was very loud. So I'm like, and I was like, ooh, traveling on Greyhound for 3 days. Oh my God. But I wanted to go to the Bay Area to be part of this workshop. So when Border Patrol came in, they're just walking down asking people, American citizen? People say yes, American citizen. The Spanish people, speaking people say sí, and just that's all they were doing. And I knew that, ooh, this is a moment of truth for me. And in that moment, my heart was racing. And I felt like I could say, yes, I am, and got away with it. But I knew that the answer was to tell the truth. And it's not to be moral or be like doing the right thing. In that moment, I knew the answer was no. And that no literally became a yes in the direction of what I was praying for. Because I ended up being in a detention center for 40 days and 40 nights. I thought, within 24 hours, they'll send me back to Atlanta. I have to go to court and immigration court. No, in a detention center. Never been in a place like that before. I had no idea what was going on. So it was a moment for me to really come to myself in a new and deeper way. So when I moved back here, it's a long way to answer the question of my clients, but I'm getting there. When I moved back here, of course, I was dealing with the trauma and the grief of that.
Right.
And it's like my struggle with belonging and identity and displacement was just turned up.
Yeah.
So the clients that I get now was in alignment with that. It's about belonging, identity, because that's what I've invested the last 4 years in getting clear. And I'm in a much deeper, better place. Because I didn't want to come back to UK. People in America would say, "Why did you come from UK to America?" I'm like, "Why not?" You know, I was like, "Yeah, UK, whatever." But I have a mentor who always say everybody has to go home. Now, I say I'm a Nigerian man born in UK, but this is where I was born. So it's part home as well. And I needed to be back here to heal what was getting in the way for me moving forward. So I had to confront myself. There were times it was very painful. It was very hard. So really my focus is about supporting people, struggling with unbelonging, identity, and where it's home. That's a constant thing for most of us. So that's the issue that we deal with.
One of my teachers, Frances Weller, who works a lot with maturing the overculture regarding grief and loss,
Mm,
he believes that there are 5 gates or entrances into the land of the grieving. And one
mm,
of those gateways into grief is that we did not receive the level of welcome that we are hardwired to
mhm.
receive.
I believe that.
And like you, in these last 5, 6 years, I have so many of my clients, they might present with a certain intention or outcome they want.
Mhm,
At the core of that, underneath all these other things,
mhm.
is the loss of connection, the
Absolutely,
lack of belonging.
absolutely.
So, can you share some wisdom with us? Um, because many times, we are adults. We cannot go back and change our family of origin,
Mhm.
who our parents and grandparents were struggling for survival.
Exactly.
They may not have been given the opportunity to welcome us in a way that would give us healthy hardwiring in our neurology.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think of my mother and my father, but my mother specifically because I was in the womb, and there's a connection between the child, and the mother during those times. And my mother is in a country she's never been to before. She was in Germany, experienced all sorts of racism. The weather was cold compared to Nigeria. She had to learn a new language. She went to work. She went to school, and the same thing when she got here. She could speak English, but she went to school. The weather's, there's a lot that she went through that I marinated in. Now, there is a fallacy, I believe. I don't know if I've said myth. I'll leave it as fallacy. It seems I got it. It seems like we believe that there was a time where people knew they belonged and something happened to us, something went wrong, and now we're trying to fix that. Maybe, but I think it's more about There's a story of belonging that's being told. And this is a chapter, a certain chapter for our generation. And the ones that come next, the next chapter, will have a deeper understanding of belonging. And I also believe that that craving for belonging, for connection, is that sense of separation that we feel from the creator, from the divine, leaving that space, that formless space, the invisible space, and becoming a human being, and it feels disconnected. So there is a longing in the soul to remember home, but oftentimes we project it, or we make our experience wrong. We blame our parents for why our life is the way it is. But we're literally storytellers. We're telling a story of the great I am. So for me, when you talk about tips, it's like to recognize, to first of all, it's get still long enough, just sit for a few seconds, take a deep breath, and just think of that idea of belonging and see what rises up. Maybe even ask yourself, who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And you may or may not receive an answer in that moment. But if we start to make time to ask those kind of questions, we are allowing ourselves to tap into the soul, to remember memory, to tap into a memory that is beyond words. That though I am in a physical body, I am still a part of it all. And this sense of separation that I'm feeling is really just happening in the mind. That you're in a different location, Melody, I am here. Logically, we're in different but the experience that we're having right now is just if we're in the same room. To the logical mind, we're like, okay, well, at least we could touch each other. But there are many ways to touch one another, through words, through expressions, or maybe even just stillness and just looking and breathing. And remember that there is so much more about us that is invisible. And the more we learn to be comfortable with the invisible part of ourselves, I talk about it as the capital S self, the true self, not the false self that we have programmed, formed, and made up to present ourselves in a certain kind of way, but to be able to show up. Now, that's a journey. And we all have to go on that journey to discover, who do I want to be in this world? We're often looking for ways to blend in, to be part of a community, to find my tribe. That's good. But I say to people, you must be willing to stand out in order to fit in. Because if you fit in without standing out, you're going to end up compromising yourself. You end up have to like maybe minimize some things about you because you're not sure if you let that part of you be seen, would you still be allowed in the community? So it's for me, it's daily spiritual practice, connecting with nature, journaling, to write, to play around with that question, belonging, to do a flow writing and just write. What does belonging be to you? Just keep writing. No judgment, no criticism, just write. Where am I from? I tell people, you're from where water is from. Where's water from? Where was the first drop? If there ever was a first drop, we don't know. Water is ancient, is alive. Air, it's ancient, it's alive. That's where we're from. We're from nowhere and everywhere. So until we really are willing to accept that, first of all, home is wherever I say it is, and no matter what it looks like, no matter what my experience, my journey, what my parents taught me or didn't teach me, or whether they were present or not, I belonged. And it's more than just saying it. We have to demonstrate it. We have to stretch ourselves. We have to do the work. And it's like planting a seed. A seed is like, oh, look at seed. I got this seed from a friend of mine. It told me it's a moringa, or something like I don't know, but she said it's good for this and that. And I can plant it and I would have a big plant in no time. But I can hold on to the seed and telling everybody about the seed. There's a difference if I plant the seed and water it and nurture it and then take the leaves or whatever I need to do to make the tea. So we must be willing to cultivate a relationship with our true self, the capital S self, and recognize that the false self is that false. It's okay, no judgment, because we need it to survive. We
Right.
need it to blend in sometimes to find our way. And once we blend in or once we fit in, we may realize I need to tap into my true self. Either way, we're going to get to the same place if the intention is right. So it takes a moment to just be still and do
Yeah.
the work.
And this brings up an important, for me, this is a part of maturing. For
Absolutely.
me, this is a part of becoming a wise elder.
Absolutely.
And yeah, in my younger years, there were certain communities or tribes that I found myself belonging to, and much of my identity was wrapped up in being a member of this group and that group.
Mhm.
And I see the need for that
Yeah.
in our younger years. I see
Mhm.
the importance of that.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't replace a strong, healthy family of origin,
Mhm.
which some of us were lucky enough to have parts of, right?
Yeah.
If
Yes.
not a fullness. But these groups, help us to feel like like we're establishing our identity. We're
Exactly. Yeah.
establishing ourselves. But after a certain point, as we approach midlife,
Mhm.
the the identity then begins to feel false unless and until we do the kind of work that you are speaking of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is true. And, as you were talking, I was thinking about the phases of life. There are many ways that people will talk about the phases of life, but that for me, we start as an infant, dependent. And
Mhm.
then from the teenage year, we start to want to be independent. And sometimes we say that we get stuck in that even as adults. We forget, because it's not often talked about, to step into interdependence because everything is connected. And in order to be in this phase, to be in this space, it's important to know, what am I contributing? What am I contributing to this community called life? That's the interdependence. That you need me, I need you, we need one another. It's
Right,
like the human body.
right.
All the parts are working together to move this body forward. Can you imagine if the brain said, I'm tired, all I do is send information down to the legs, and I don't get to see what is light down there in their arms? In my case, it's like all I get to do is just fly all over the place, because I do that a lot. The legs is like, well, I don't get to do that. Or the heart is like, I just pump blood all day long. You guys don't understand how tired. No, they work together so that we can be whole and healed. And so this idea, this phases of life is, yes, it's actually a sense of safety, self-preservation, to blend in, because we're learning about ourselves, we're learning new ways, and sometimes it's safer in community to learn about yourself. And it's like, wait a minute, last time I was this open and sensitive, I was mistreated, I was abused, I was molested when I was a child. So I am going to protect myself in order to get up every day to keep moving forward. And if we're lucky enough to learn and understand the importance of grieving, and we start doing the work, we start to realize, oh, there's another way to be, where I don't have to hide what is real and true about me. However, I need to honor the part of me that died in that experience, that's painful, the things I couldn't be with. And in that process, we start to learn that let me take off the mask, you know. And it's also important to say that we're in a time where what we're talking about, is also not limited by age. Generally, it is. Like this could happen. I mean, some of these young people that we're seeing nowadays through social media and the things that they're saying or doing, playing instruments or making moves, you're like, where did this child learn this from? Because there is a continuum of stories, and we are clearing the path, and they're clearing the path for those who are going to come after them. But it's like, you know, with the right intention, well, let me phrase that. All is well, period. Because love is relentless. Life is relentless. And I say to people, excuse me, sometimes this makes people shake in their boots. It's like life is committed to breaking you open. Life is committed to breaking us open like a seed once again. For that seed to grow, it's got to die and break open. But sometimes we want to grow without breaking open. That's claustrophobia. Excuse me. But yeah.
Ade, hearing you say that, I want to go back with you into that detention center.
Mm, mm.
On the bus, you not just knew that the moral truth was, no, I'm not a US citizen, but you felt like the divine was telling you to be honest.
Oh yeah.
And so what were you thinking when you were in the detention center? Was that a moment of you being cracked open, like that seed?
With heat. I was cracked open with heat in the desert of New Mexico. I was having the Jesus experience. I remember, I think it was Sunday morning. I mean, I felt like I got transported from one world into another.
Yeah.
Even though I could communicate with the people in there, I say communicate. Most of the people were from a Spanish speaking country. There was a guy from Ghana, but on this Sunday morning, I didn't really know everybody. But here I am, the champion and the passionate one about freedom of expression, and you're free to be and create whatever you want. And I'm in this place where my freedom, physical freedom, is limited.
Right.
It's my mind could not even figure out what the hell is going on here. And I remember the correction officer on Sunday morning, she was giving us something. I can't remember what it was. And we were, this probably bring me to tears again. I'm quite sensitive like that. But anyway, we were walking and I asked her something I was supposed to do. And she told me, and she said, what they're doing to you people is wrong. This is a correction officer. This is wrong. I just broke. And I was quickly going like this because there was like so many of us in that warehouse type place. It's like, oh my God. Because one, I felt her love. I felt her humanity for what we were going through.
Yeah.
Because my constant narrative was, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Truth cuts both ways. So yes, maybe I didn't belong there. Maybe a part of me believed I didn't belong there. But when I said, God, why am I here? I don't belong here. And the voice of spirit said, you don't belong here. So these guys do. I was like, oh, a minute like that. But really, in essence, I wasn't advocating for Ross. I wasn't saying we don't belong here. I was saying I don't belong here.
Right.
I am the special one. I don't care about them. I don't really see them. But it's we're living in an inclusive world where the spirit just said to me, what about them? Do they belong here? And it's one of those moments where I was dealing with my own pain and yet I was cracked open to a new way of being and seeing, like, wow.
Right.
And I knew I was in for a lesson. Now I didn't know how long I was going to be there. thought in a few days.
Right.
Then it became a week and then 2 weeks. But they would never tell me. They don't tell people when they're going to let you go back or whatever. And I had to face myself. I had to write 2 letters where I had to confess the truth, to speak on things that I've held, because there were moments, even when I thought I was going to leave, and then I found out I was going to be there for another week and a half or maybe 2 weeks. I remember saying to my former wife then on the phone, she was trying to console me, and I said, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Again, I was in tears. It's like, why am I here? And then I went back on my bunk, sat down, started journaling, and I said, okay, I get it. There's some more truth conversations I need to have with myself. And I just closed my eyes and just listened that, yes, there's some truth I need to speak. And I went to get some paper and the pencil that they allow us to use, a little small pencil, to start writing letters to 2 people in my life. One of them was my former wife, to tell them about truth that I've been holding in, that I've been afraid to share. And what made the letter to my former wife even more special, if you will, is because she was basically, even at that time, we weren't even talking anymore. I'd said to her, you know what, I can't do this relationship. We tried many, many times. She became my number one advocate. She's the one out there trying to get an attorney, constant checking on me, putting money on the phone so I could talk to other people, liaison. And she was the one. She was my connection to the outside world. So this truth that I was about to tell her, I didn't know how it was going to land.
Mm.
It was scary, but I knew I needed to do it. I did find out many months later that she got it. I think she read it. She didn't read the whole thing, but her spirit told her she didn't need to read it. It's like, don't read it, don't read it. And I was like, oh, really? She said, because she's quite intuitive as well, and she knew that it's just no point. And like any healing, like forgiveness, healing work, inner work, ultimately is for us.
It's for us, right?
It was for me to tell that truth, be willing to risk it all.
Right.
And that's what set me free. But there were many experiences in there where I was cracked open,
Yeah. Yeah.
cracked open. Yeah.
So one of the things you haven't used this word, but there's an experience that I keep having as I'm listening to you, and that is the experience of someone who is fully embodied. So like you can, if you are fully embodied yourself, you can feel
Hmm.
when you're in the presence of someone who is speaking to you, not from just the neck up,
Right.
from every cell of the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to acknowledge that.
Thank
It's,
you.
yeah, you know, this is just conversation,
Hmm.
sharing life experience, and yet also a transmission, a gift of your embodied experience. So let's talk about what you are doing now, what you're interested in. Like, what are you offering any online programs or, yeah, tell me how people can reach you and what you're offering.
I actually have uh, rebranding would be a way to say what I'm going through. And I almost said what I went through, but I'm going through it. And especially in the last, maybe since last October, well, actually, it was really around June, July that I had a major, major fallout and said, I am not doing this anymore because things were not working. And I was telling Spirit, I was like, no, we got to do this differently. I can't do this anymore. I was literally dying alive because from like June, July, August, September, I was just like, what is happening? What is happening? And it's one of those things that we don't we don't talk about it a lot. That, we think of death as when someone actually leaves the body, but we're constantly dying,
Yes,
constantly dying.
absolutely.
We
Our old
died
identities.
as a what am I trying to say? As a global village during the pandemic. Some people left the body and some of us didn't.
Right.
So my rebranding is really, it's like as I said earlier, it's like fine tuning that, supporting people in that sense of belonging and understanding the power of our divine self.
Mm.
We can spend a lot of time exposing the lie, but forget to reveal the truth. So for me, it's like, yes, expose the lie, but put more attention, more energy, more of your time into revealing the truth. It is scary. Like if this conversation, you go out there, this conversation is about whether it's a political leader, whether it's about sex, whether it's about religion, but has such a negative connotation, or why the popes are doing this with young children. Oh, there'd be a lot of people having conversation, typing away. However, if we were talking about bringing healing to humanity, I'm not saying people won't show up. The conversation is kind of like, yeah, yeah, I'm sending love and light. So for me, my thing is to reminding people, pointing people back to their divine self. We are becoming a new being. So I call my business now the business of being,
Oh, how beautiful.
because we're here to be about the business of why we're here on this planet. The power is in who we are being, and we allow our beingness to influence. I have a gathering that's coming up, a session on June 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern, called Representing Our Stories. What is in the name? So I say representing our stories. It's not just representing our stories. We're always representing our stories.
Yes.
Show up. Sometimes you can see somebody, as soon as they show up, you're like, ooh, they've had a hard time. Ooh, they're sad. Ooh. But when you represent it, it's a space to look at the stories that you've been telling, to look at your life and be able to like interrogate yourself and say, what have I learned? How is the stories that I'm telling now creating the life that I want? Does the story that I'm telling now, does it invite more conflict? So with the representing our stories is an opportunity to be able to be more at ease in conflict, to be able to tell stories that are empowering and in alignment with our heart's desires, as opposed to, yeah, that would be nice. Oh, that's just a bucket list. No, we can tell there's power in our words, in our thoughts, in our actions. So, this representing our stories and representing what's in a name, that what's in the name part of it, when something happens, it is important to be aware of how we're naming it.
Yes.
If
Yes.
we say, "Oh my God, did you see that video? Did you see what happened on the news? What they would," that's just evil. That's just evil. People are evil. Then there's no room to learn from that experience, because none of us thinks we're evil. We always
Right.
think other people are the evil one. And sometimes the one we think are the evil one think we're the evil one.
Right.
But if we get curious sometimes, like, what would cause somebody to do that? Or it could just be, even if we don't want to go that deep, to just look at it and say, you know what? There's another way. I don't know what it is, but I'm committed to finding out what that way is. So to take in the stories of life, stories of our life, and naming it in a way that changes our experience with friends and family and people we encounter on a daily basis, so that we can live from the place of the true self
Mm.
and show what it's not a myth, it's not a pie in the sky, it's real. There just needs to be enough people, mass consciousness, willing to commit to this way of loving. Let's not just keep talking about, oh yeah, what the world needs is love, but then when there's an opportunity to love, we go into judgment, we go into hate, we go into fear.
Right.
Let's become an embodiment of love. I call that mature love.
Yeah.
It's being able to speak the truth, live the truth, show up as the truth, even though you're scared.
Mhm.
So June 10th, 2 p.m. Eastern is a place for people to tell a different story. It doesn't matter to me how traumatic it is. Bring it. Bring the story so that you at least can say, that blank happened to me. I hated it. But you know what? I decided to tell a different story because I deserve it. I am enough and I belong.
I just wanna highlight this because Ade, what you are sharing is one of the most important things. I remember, when my son was killed in a car accident, the mind, the ego wants to know, "Why did this happen? Why did this happen to him? He was a good boy. Why did this happen to me, to us?" And the story that I was making, even the term accident, what I needed to do for myself, and I was able to do this. I had some really good coaching and mentoring. Um, in the next 2 years, there were a lot of things I changed and accomplished in my life, as well as the things I already had to do, caring for my other children, caring for myself, and the telling a story about what happened in a way that honored my son's life, that honored his love, that honored his character. And, people say that you cannot go back and change the past. No, you can't change what happened, but you can change the story you are telling yourself about
Absolutely.
what happened,
Yes.
even in really difficult moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I can't recommend this work you're doing highly enough. If anybody out there is dealing with something that has happened that has that that sticks your attention. In other words, whenever you think about it, your attention doesn't smoothly go on. Your attention goes round and round and loops and loops and loops. Anything like this that sticks your attention, I highly recommend your program a day.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. Life is a never ending story. Everything, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's spirituality, whether it's about making love, sex, what we talk about, it's just a story. But we keep perpetuating old stories and we keep traumatizing ourselves, re-traumatizing ourselves because we haven't developed the muscle to tell a different story,
Yes.
you know? And I love what you shared about that. It's like, yeah, to change the story. Because as you change the story, you honor him, and that experience takes on a whole different meaning. Everything we need, we have right here. But to see it, we must be willing to see differently. I could be like, this is all there is. There's nothing here. I just have a camera in front of me and my laptop. That's it. I wish I had more in my life. But if I move my hands, like, oh, look, there's a drum next to me. I love playing the drum. Oh, there's a light here. But sometimes we go through life like this. I can't believe this happened to me and I don't know. No, but what if your hands are in the way? You
Right.
know,
Right, exactly, the blinders on.
the
Thank you
blind.
so much, Ade. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I so appreciate the way you show up in the world and the
Thank you.
way you show up for yourself.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And just want to invite people to find out more about the session representing our stories. They can go to my website, which is thebusinessofbeing.com. You find all information there.
And we'll have that in the show notes. Thank you
Great.
so much. Take
Thank you
care.
for having me. Thank you.
Oh, you
Thank
are so welcome.
you.
All right.